Red 2 on the Steam Deck OLED, so I already tried this on the LCD Steam Deck and the ROG Ally, check them in the description if you're interested or the pinned comment. So 800p, 90Hz, and I'm basically using a little bit higher settings than the console settings from Digital Foundry. This is for the 30 FPS target at native resolution. HDR is disabled because when I enable it, for some reason I lose lots of color saturation. So I'm not entirely sure on what's wrong. If you guys know why that happens when I enable HDR, let me know. I'll be interested to try that out, working properly, because HDR, when implemented correctly, looks amazing on the screen. So those are the settings for 30 FPS. Let's get into the game. Welcome to Red Dead 2, and the first thing that I'm going to remind you is that the VRAM, the UMA buffer on the BIOS, make sure it's at 1 Gigabyte. Otherwise, when you're close to water in this game, you're going to have horrible performance, drops below 30 FPS with a VRAM set to anything other than 1 Gigabyte. I tried the ROG Ally yesterday and it had the same issue. So despite being a different machine, Red Dead 2 doesn't like much when the UMA buffer on the BIOS is set to anything other than 1 gig for some reason. And man, this is such a beautiful game. Again, 30 FPS target, because when you get to the city, despite being CPU limited, I increased the settings so we're closer to 30. Let me unplug the charger so you guys can see battery life with analog frame rate like this. So I unplugged the charger so we can also see battery life. And the thing with the city is that we are usually CPU limited, even when targeting 35 FPS or something like that. That's why 40s is so difficult in the LCD Steam Deck as well as on this one. So if you want to have the most stable experience with best visuals, I'd say target 30 FPS. Again, in the city we're usually CPU limited. But as you start fighting with the police and all that, whoa, there's less NPCs on the screen, less characters. So that will make it easier for the CPU, to say it in some way. But I mean, on the OLED screen, I cannot even explain to you guys how good this looks. It probably doesn't show properly on camera. But man, this is a beautiful game. I mean, it's always been a beautiful game. But with the OLED screen is something else. And again, if you want to use HDR, feel free to do so, but for some reason I couldn't get as a saturated color as without it. If you know anything about the settings, please let me know. I would like to have good HDR. So with this you should have like 2 hours of battery, give or take. So let's now lock it to 30 FPS. Okay, so 30 FPS. And again, this is for best settings. And we're talking about visuals versus performance. And I'm doing something intensive, that's why the high CPU usage as well. But at 30 FPS, you also help the CPU do less work. So both the CPU and GPU are saying, hey, thanks, we didn't want to work as much. Which means less heat, less battery usage, and all that. So according to this, we should have an extra 30 minutes of battery with these settings. So 2.5 hours of Red Dead 2 on pretty intensely high settings. Medium to high, but mostly stuff on high settings. Whoops. But this is in the city, so we're going to check out outside of the city as well. Alright, so I respawned. I'm now getting away from the city to see if battery life is any better. I'm already seeing, instead of 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 50 minutes. Again, the city is a stress point, a lot of CPU usage, GPU usage is pretty high as well, and the more things that are happening, the worse it will be for the Steam Deck, obviously. So this is to basically have visuals as a preference with, well, now it says 3 hours of battery. So it'll take a while for you to get to the city in the first place. The city is quite a few hours into the game. And man, despite being medium to high, I mean, saying medium like if it was something bad, this game still looks amazing. This is superior to the console settings. And we're at native resolution, not using FSR or any upscaling. So yeah, 2.5 hours, maybe 2 hours, 40 minutes. It highly depends on what's going on. Outside of the city, it seems to be getting higher battery numbers. And if you want even more battery life, use FSR quality. That will lessen the GPU load. That probably will give you an extra 20 to 30 minutes battery. So quality FSR is a good option in my opinion. And the 30 FPS cap to have around 2.5 to 3 hours of battery, give or take, maybe a little bit more. Or you're playing at 30 FPS, so let's attempt 40s. Okay, so now we locked it to 45, hopefully it can stay there, we'll see. 800p, 90 Hz, once again, but now some stuff I lowered it to medium, some other to low, and I put balanced FSR2. Let's try it out first. Then on the settings, something like this. I forgot to lower this a little bit. So if you want to copy the settings, pause the video. They are right here for you guys. And the geometry at 50%. Yeah, something like this. So let's get into it right away. Alright, so the settings are applied. I restarted the game as well. Outside the city, we're using almost all the GPU, but the frames are at 45. The issue that I have targeting 40s on the LCD Steam Deck were mostly CPU limitation. By CPU limitation I mean the GPU usage wasn't into the 90s, was more into the 70s and 80%. In this case, yeah, the CPU is starting to be used as I get into the city. So again, the city is like the worst case scenario for the CPU. Yeah, here we are GPU limited actually. Mostly GPU. Although the CPU is also saying, hey, what's going on? So yeah, 45 it's possible, but not 100% of the way, as you can see when getting into the city, obviously. Yeah, this is the area, this part specifically is the most CPU bound part that I found so far. It drops into the upper 30s. Again, here it's more of a CPU limitation, pretty common. Lots of NPCs, more geometry. When you're outside of the city, which is most of the game, this is more of a... yeah, a few hours into the game you get here. So I think it's not a big deal, but as we wreak havoc in the city, you'll start seeing better performance. That's because the people are fleeing the city because we're shooting. So again, my advice for this one probably would be to keep it like this. But if this bothers you in the city, lock it to 40 instead of trying to get 45. Just an opinion, of course. The game still looks great, has great shadows, great lighting, but it just doesn't hold to 45. So my advice would be to lock it to 40 instead. Alright, so locking it to 40 should be better. 5 FPS is a big difference when it comes to CPU and GPU performance. And 40 still looks good enough, although it's not perfect, unfortunately. But it's faster than on the LCD Steam Deck, at least when it comes to stability. It's been better for me, so let me reload the save. I mean, I think this is the best way to play it on the OLED. It'll use more battery than locking it to 30 with higher settings. And while we're using balanced FSR, you can also use quality. When targeting 40s, it's not a huge difference, but you get a sharper image, so that's worth trying. Whoops. But as you can see, when moving in the city and we're spawning in more NPCs, more horses, all that, we drop into the upper 30s. Again, that's normal because there's a lot of CPU usage when that happens. There's more things going on. So as the city starts getting empty and empty and empty, we're going to get better performance because less demand on the GPU and, sorry, on the CPU. There's less characters, less horses. So yeah, when CPU limited, let's just say that's not nice. Being CPU limited is one of the worst things, in my opinion. Happened to the PS4, Xbox One, Xbox One X, all that. But on PC, as you can see, we have options. And I'm almost done emptying the city from NPCs. As you could probably notice, the more time since I started wreaking havoc, the better the performance got, so less drops into 39. And the CPU usage isn't as high as before. And now I'm getting away from the city once again, so more of a GPU test, I would say, when you get outside. And with 40s, I think it's good enough. I mean, just use one setting to play the entire game. I don't think it's worth targeting 45, personally. I mean, it drops into the upper 30s in bad parts in the city. But when you're targeting 45, it's more noticeable to drop into 38 than if you're playing at 40s and then it drops to 38, so... yeah, outside of the city, wilderness, smaller towns, it's all good. It still looks amazing. I'm always blown away by the graphics in this game. Considering this is a mix of medium and low and a couple of things on high. It's kind of mind-blowing. Also, this is balanced FSR, but you could easily do quality. I did balance to make sure that we were CPU bound in the city. But in here, there's not much of a difference when it comes to performance, I mean. And in a smaller screen like this one, 7 point something inches, we're pretty good. And I cannot stop talking about how good the freaking OLED panel looks. I mean, it's insane how good this game looks with an OLED panel in comparison to LCD. But it's obvious because there's so much color that it kinda makes sense. But still, with a smaller screen and FSR, I think it looks incredible. Despite being a pretty low resolution. As long as you don't have the screen at this distance from your face, you should be good to go. You have a lot of fun playing this. If you're targeting 40s, expect 2 hours, 20 minutes, something like that, a little bit longer. If you're locked to 30 FPS, put quality FSR and play on medium to high settings, you're looking more closely to 3 hours of battery. A little bit more maybe on the OLED. But personally on the OLED, just for responsiveness, I'll play at 40. Yeah, in the city it drops, but it's usually... when you need those frames, you're usually not fighting. That's what I'm trying to say. Most of the time it's into the 40s. Which is a big contrast with the LCD Steam Deck, that actually hit 40s, but it's harder for it to maintain it, especially in the city. In the city it stutters more on the LCD. So a little bit more stability is always nice. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did trying it again, but on the Steam Deck OLED. I also tried it on the ROG Ally and the LCD Steam Deck. If you're interested, links in the pinned comment. On the ROG Ally is also very impressive, but it doesn't have as nice of a screen as on this one. So I recommend you go check it out. It's a pretty nice looking game still. So So thank you for watching, and I'll see ya next time. Bye guys.